And this is Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Each show, we bring you usable insights from tested leaders that you can apply to the business of running your business. Welcome back, Clean Techers. My guest today is Gareth Brown. He's the CEO and co-founder of Clir Renewables, a risk intelligence provider that helps banks and investors understand and manage wind, solar, and storage portfolios. Clir was founded in Vancouver in 2017 and has grown from 6 employees and 500 megawatts of assets to a team of more than 100 experts managing over 200 gigawatts of renewable and storage data. Clir has raised more than $50 million in equity, debt, and grants, and built a company that helps investors and operators drive returns from their wind, solar, and battery assets. Gareth, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
It's great to be here.
Okay, so we always start the show with a career journey and your mentors. So I want to dive into that, but first I want to give you a chance to tell our listeners about Clir Renewables. What do you do at Clir Renewables?
Yeah, so Clir is a renewable AI platform. We basically connect into wind, solar, and storage assets all over the world and take the data off them and give them intelligence back on how they can improve the financial returns and minimize risk on those assets.
And so what are the main questions that you're hearing from your customers? And I'm thinking specifically about Wall Street. That's one of the things I understand about you is that some of your customers are banks and Wall Street. So what are those customers asking you about their projects? Do you notice any trends from that customer type?
Yeah, I mean, we work for the major investment funds who are investing into this asset class. And what we see is renewables is unique. We see that it's the only power source where we don't know what the resource is going into the asset. So when you have a nuclear plant, a coal plant, or a hydro plant, you have a pipe with a controlled intake. So you know how much energy is going through that pipe, and you know how much electricity is being produced on the back end. So it's really easy to tell if that turbine is underperforming there. In the wind space, we have a coffee cup anemometer behind a 100-meter blade on a 100-meter tower, which is on hundreds of turbines all spread out on the hillside or on the ocean. And similar for solar as well, where you have a very distributed asset. When the asset underperforms on those investment assumptions there, it can be quite hard to tell why. So is it because of the wind or is it underperforming technology there? So what we see from investors is they want really great reporting. They want to understand what has happened at that farm, how does that compare to its peers, and then what will happen into the future. So what we've built with our AI platform is the ability to explain what has happened with that asset, benchmark, and then give forward-looking projections on yield, on major component exchanges there, so folks have the best information for their investment decisions.
I think that's so interesting. You make a really great point about the known knowns in traditional fuels. Like, you know how much fuel you're putting in, you can know what you should expect getting out. But with renewables, which, you know, one of the benefits of renewables is that the fuel is free. One of the downsides I'm hearing is that it's really hard to measure that fuel because it's variable. And so it sounds like you're helping your clients get a hold of that.
Exactly that. Once you've got great reporting there, we can really understand your investment. It's really easy to then squeeze out as much return out of that asset there, whether it's revenue, OPEX, or CAPEX that you're optimizing on the asset. So a great example recently was we had a customer who onboarded a large portfolio to our platform, and within 3 months they were able to reduce their bonus payments that they were paying their service provider there because they were able to get a really clear view of what was going on asset there.
Are you able to determine the source of a problem for why an asset is underperforming?
Yes, I mean, it is constrained by the quality of the data coming off, but that's exactly what our AI does. It's really looking to connect into these assets there and understand if it's a mechanical issue, a technology issue there, or a fundamental issue within resource, so that folks can basically proceed with confidence knowing what to do next. So we had a battery asset recently, for example, there, which was trading on the grid. and its inability to basically trade at the right times was having huge impact on the financial returns there. So just putting great AI in place, putting great intelligence there allows us to make sure that those financial returns are optimized.
That's so cool. So I think I heard you say you're kind of looking at three things. You're looking at the technology, you're looking at the software, and you're looking at, what was the other part?
Yeah, so it's the challenge is breaking apart the resource from the performance of the technology. So most of these,
Yeah,
a
okay.
lot of these assets are underperforming in the space, and it's a big frustration for the investors. Right, they've placed this large amount of capital, billions of dollars, into these portfolios, and then the asset doesn't quite do what it says on the tin, and then understanding why, and is there anything that they can do about that, so they get a bigger bang for their buck there as they go. So it's looking at the technology, separating it from the resource, but then knowing where to look in the first place, and then knowing what to do when you find that issue there. And it's really where AI has been so exciting there, is the ability to scale that.
And most of these projects that you're looking at, are they pretty big projects, like utility scale?
Exactly, yeah. So we're working on small rooftop projects all the way to the largest offshore wind farms. We're working on assets at the multi-gigawatt scale at this point.
Okay. We're going to shift now to just learn about your background, Gareth. You are the CEO of a growing company. How did you get here? How did you become the CEO?
I finished university at Edinburgh. I'm a bit of a nerd. I did my undergrad in math, so I ended up working for a company out of Scotland who was about 20 staff. And I was in the right place at the right time, because there wasn't a huge amount of expertise in our industry. Like I always say, if you're a turbine tech today, you should be a VP of operations in 3 years' time. Because the industry is just so much bigger today than it was a year ago or so, on that point. So what I was able to do was work in India, China, Sri Lanka from Glasgow, but then come out to North America and set up their operation here in Vancouver. So I have this great experience of going all around the world and working on projects, realizing that folks didn't know how to run these assets all that well in our industry. So doing that, it just gave me a great experience, but also seeing the pain points in the market. So in 2016, I quit my job and wanted to take advantage of low-cost and cloud-based computing to basically scale impact. And that's where, like, my experience of working on projects all over the world, seeing this pain point of assets just really underperforming in our industry, wanting to have my impact on climate change and being able to scale that.
That's so cool. And what was the company that you were working at before you decided to go out on your own?
Yeah, so it was a startup out of Glasgow called Clir Energy. It was a consulting engineering firm. We worked on the first offshore wind farms. We worked on the first some of the first largest projects all over the world. So we're working for the insurers, the equity investors, and lenders.
So you've been working from day one for the same customer type that you're working for now.
Exactly, and it's just that it's having a decade of working with them and understanding the problems there is giving us a real leg up of being able to scale a startup there. So that was a big point of being able to be successful with Clir and scale the business.
That makes sense. Can you recall any memorable mentors who influenced you through your career journey? And if so, what lesson did they teach you that you think other people should know about?
Yeah, I think it's really important from a confidence perspective. I would say that I had two former bosses, Ian Irvin and Steve McDonald, and two Glaswegians who taught me to basically say yes. You'll figure it out. We were working on so many global first projects there. There wasn't another option there, and it's being confident of just taking on that work, backing yourself to work it out and go from there. So I would say that there were two folks who were two big impacts there on my career.
Gareth, I'll tell you that advice that you just gave on say yes and figure it out, that's coming in a really interesting time in our firm. So it's really meaningful. Thank you. Another question I like to ask my guests is if you could go back to 2017 when you started the company, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, I think it's focus on go-to-market. That would be my biggest area of learnings. If you like you can have the best product in the world, you can have the best value point, but that ability to scale from founder-led sales to system-led sales, if you like, of being able to scale the kind of sales and the marketing. It's great having me going in and speaking to a customer. You can talk about 20, 30 different points of value there, but how does that allow you to hire a sales team, a marketing team, to be able to learn that quickly? They don't have 10 years to figure it out on that point and scale up the go-to-market engine there. So if I was going back to 2017, it's really learning about what's scalable, not really from a product perspective on that point, but from a go-to-market perspective. And quite often with the market as well is ready for certain things. Like we're going in and selling, I'd say a few years ago would be selling, how to run when customers can't even walk yet. So we'd go in with forward-looking projections and benchmarking and all this intelligence that they can act on when the reality is that most of your customers are still figuring out how to crawl. They just want to get their data in one place. They want to have good, solid reporting there. So talking about all the optimizations and upside, it's just like, well, that's great, but I've got to deal with the basics first. And I think that for me, on that point, from a go-to-market perspective, it's that driving simplicity and driving a consistent message, which is overwhelming the team on what to do. So, quite often your success can be what holds you back. We'll have some massive sales. We're going to push through on those points because we're able to put founder-led sales on those points. But being able to bring it back into how do you scale this? How do you repeat this 100 times, 1,000 times? You can really get the impact. And I want to come back to our mission of minimizing humankind's impact on the climate. It sounds very grandiose there, but we want to be on every wind and solar farm on the planet and being able to achieve that. So people have got great investor-grade reporting. They've got great oversight, performance monitoring there, and also great reconciliation with budgets and contractual availability there. So all those kind of workflows fit into just great understanding of the assets there. And to do that, we have to simplify our messaging at times. And that's been a big learning point for me as a CEO, as a leader.
You hit on a few things there, and actually you lead me naturally to one of my other questions. You talked about founder-led sales. That is something I'm going to jump ahead in my question list here because you touched on it, and I want to learn more. So it sounds like the answer is going to be yes to this question, but tell me more. As the CEO, are you involved in the sales process, and what's your role in that process? What are you noticing from your customers in your conversations?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm the chief executive, but you're the chief salesperson, you're the chief of customer success and everything else. The biggest thing that I have to do in the lead of those roles is build teams. It's work to get there on the point. You got to hire great people, which is probably the most important thing for any CEO as you go forward there. But then two, like everyone you hire, you need to empower them, but you also need to kind of make sure that they've got the tool set there to succeed, the background knowledge and the frameworks there. So I would say that, look, I'm obviously still heavily involved with our sales, our fundraising and everything else here at Clir, but the big focus for me is how do you build that sales and go-to-market engine so we can really scale the business there as we go.
When you touched on something earlier too that I want to ask more about, and that's fundraising. So we work with tons of companies who need to raise, Series B, Series C, whatever it is. And it's a challenging fundraising environment right now for renewables. So you've had successful financing rounds. What advice would you give to other companies that are looking to do a fundraise and how they can get attention from investors? What do you think led to the traction that you got? Was there any aha moment or something that really clicked?
Yeah, I mean, when I set up the company back in 2017 there, we kind of bootstrapped through with friends and family investors there early on, but went out to kind of outside investments after that first year. Quickly realized it was about traction in the market. Now, this obviously depends on what your startup's doing, if it's going deep tech, if they're doing and software, you can have different forms of traction there, but ultimately the market speaks. I think there's two levels I look at there of like, one is that founder-led sales there, or those early sales you can go out and make. You can prove that pain point is there. And it's great getting big logos on board, but then the ability to go from a pilot to a fleet-wide sale and that repeatable sales engine is the second proof point there when you start getting beyond Series B. So I come back to the recommendation before of go to market. Even though renewables, certainly I'm based here in Canada, is having a really hard time south of the border right now with the current administration there. The bottom line is renewables is one. It's the cheapest form of electricity. It's fast to deploy. Solar last year, there was more solar built globally than every other power source combined. The question is, how quickly will it be deployed now to displace the fossil fuels on that point? So I don't think investors are going to stay away from renewables on that point. Sure, there's short-term investment issues with major projects there. But I think for renewable energy firms as a whole, and both globally as well, there's huge tailwinds behind those companies.
You actually set me up perfectly for the next question, which is on the geographies. So you're based in Canada. You have operations spanning North and South America and Europe. Have you noticed, first of all, any changes in the market in the USA under the Trump administration? And do you think that could have ripple effects globally?
America is, it's the force of innovation in the Western world. We need the Americans on board. We're working hard at renewables and investing in innovation there. So what we see is obviously, look, there's been a huge amount of layoffs south of the border, particularly on the development side. We see similar in offshore wind in Europe with some of the uncertainty there. But the bottom line is, I say, renewables it's got the data centers, then the amount of electricity that AI is going to drive use, particularly in the Western world, particularly in the US, means that the tailwinds are there on that point. So we haven't seen major impact on our business because we're primarily focused on the operational side. But obviously it causes investors to pause. It causes investment from companies on IT infrastructure to take a second look. But the missed opportunity of not investing in Clir or similar platforms is huge. So we're seeing that sales in Q4 for us should be our biggest quarter ever. So,
wow. Do you think that's because companies understand how important it is to make sure that the assets that we do have are performing at their best and that they're not underperforming?
Yeah, I think people are having different challenges, right? I mean, a few years ago, we talked about 100 megawatts being a big portfolio. Then it was a gigawatt, and now it's tens of gigawatts. And you're dealing with multiple technologies. You've got wind, solar, BESS. Before, it was very skewed towards wind by itself. But anyone who owns a wind farm probably owns a solar farm and probably owns a battery as well. So you've got all these multiple technologies. You've then got to report and operate on that. You've got a problem that there just aren't enough technicians in the market. There's a dearth of expertise to actually operate these plants. So you can obviously hire and train to fill that hole, but you can also invest in technology. And if you want to be tech enabled, getting a platform like Clir in place is really, really key.
Interesting. Well, I want to ask you now about my favorite topic, which is marketing, PR, and AI, which is a new thing, but it's, the basis of your program is AI. But I want to talk about challenges. So what for you, Gareth, is the toughest marketing challenge that you're facing right now?
At the end of the day, AI, machine learning, LLM, whatever the words being thrown around, it all comes back to business value. And you need to think hammer, chisel, screwdriver for all these tools, like it's the right tool for the right process there on the point. It's really exciting because AI is so powerful in so many areas there, but you need to bring it back to that return on investment there. And I think for us, what our platform has got so much potential in what it does. It's just bringing it back to kind of what is the immediate pain points of our customers really effectively. So we've just launching our kind of new marketing campaign through Q4 to basically build on the success that we've seen from a sales perspective there, but making sure that we communicate really effectively with the market as we go forward.
Well, you answered my next question, which is, at what point did you invest in communications or PR? I mean, I can tell you, I've worked with TigerCom's worked with nearly 200 companies, and a lot of them are engineer-driven startups that have grown over time. A lot of times we hear from companies who, they didn't invest in marketing right away. They were able to grow through word of mouth.
Yeah.
So what was your process like at Clir? At what point did you invest in communications or bring on somebody full-time to be thinking about marketing and comms?
Marketing's key, right? You want to get that top of funnel coming in on that point. You want to test not just what is one person's problem, but is everyone that is an industry-wide problem on that point, and test how well that communication works. So we've always, we brought on our first marketing resource on, I want to say in 2019, around then, individuals, but the real ramp up came in May 2021. Where we were able to demonstrate in our Series B that we could get major logos signed on board. What we weren't then able to do was do the fleet-wide sales on that point. So we invested in the sales and marketing to push out on that point. We essentially got some of our assumptions wrong. We basically went out, spent a lot from our Series B. We kept growing the business throughout, but we scaled up the company and had to downsize our spend on that point. So we would be in a stable position where we're like, today we're cash flow pot. We've got more money coming in than going out. So what I would say, the messaging on the marketing side was not being really crystal clear on the sales engine perspective of those metrics, those early adopting signals there that, look, if I put $1 in, I'm going to get $3 back or $10 back on that point.
Got it. That's interesting. So you had a slow start and you had a surge, and then you had to scale back, and now you're kind of finding that equilibrium. That's so interesting.
It is, for sure. And I think like the big come back to that go to market, really understanding that buying process of your customers, that selling, that ideal customer profile, and then that expansion play, which I think can perhaps get missed earlier on when you're making those first sales. You're like, great, this person's buying, they're going to buy more from me, but getting stuck at that pilot stage and just making sure that you've got that expansion process really well understood, the decision makers, the value props, the communication, the marketing around that, and the engagement piece, so you can drive from there. And I think that marketing piece, you need to invest in it in day one, but to really scale it and to build that larger engine on top, it's having that repeatable process, which has got the data and the narrative. I always emphasize, people go, do you want to be data driven? But I say narrative without data is fiction, and but data by itself needs to have those tests and assumption and that narrative that you're putting on top.
I love that. I love what you just said. It's so funny that you made that point. I was just listening to a podcast the other morning where there were two different podcast hosts, and one of them is a very data-driven guy, and another one, he just has a different decision-making factor. But we're big believers at TigerCom that human beings are essentially, we are emotional creatures first, and then rational being second. And usually, a lot of times we make decisions based on our emotions, and then we use facts to to back up what we're thinking. All right, we're going to shift gears now. We're going to talk about learning and development. So when you think about your professional career and you think about your education, is there any training or book or podcast or anything memorable from your past that you feel really influenced who you are today or kind of drives your ethos?
Yeah, I mean, I remember my former, the Ian Irvin took me aside and said, look, you need to do some leadership courses. So he sent me to UBC here on the point. I remember sitting in the rooms. It was great to be with leaders, right? Of just hearing their perspective, what was going on. So that was it was good for me. Certainly, it can be a bit candid and blunt sometimes, and softening those skills a little bit more is key. So that was a good one on that point. And then on top of that, it's taking the time out to kind of work on yourself. I mean, one of the biggest things I've realized I got it into my 40s is, I can't quite work in quite the same way that I used to, flying all around, working all hours, eating whatever I like, but realizing that your physical shape has a huge impact on on your mental shape. So I say that the biggest learning there has been not just about your professional wise on training on what to do as a leader there, but it's just spending time on eating right, on exercise, because you're going to be able to be so much more productive there on that point of doing the smart things and not just the most hours. You still have to work bloody hard, but being smart around it and then being effective, because it isn't really time isn't the constraint. It is still the most precious, the second most precious resource, but the most precious is energy. It's like, do you have the energy to do the next hard task, to do the next hard thing and get through them? So timing when you're working on the most important things and driving that through is critical.
Every CEO who I've talked to has made that same point that, look, you can beat yourself up, but you're going to pay for it. And if you don't make time to do that exercise, move your body, take care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to perform the way that you want to perform. So that really resonates. And do you have a thing you like to do? Do you like running? Do you have, some people, they swim, they have a certain activity they do. Is there anything that for you that you really enjoy to do to recharge yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about and recharging. There's obviously the physical side of it. I find I've got to have engaged things. I'm not very good at doing passive things like walking the dog's great, but I'm thinking about work the whole time, walking the dog. So that I've got 2 kids who keep me entertained and busy on that side. So my wife and children are very good at keeping me grounded. But I think it's important to have projects that feed energy, if you like, on that point. So I have a small side project putting rugby in schools. Everything I've learned for startups on that point of view, that growing rugby in Vancouver is a startup issue, that it's not a well-established sport, if you like. So getting frameworks signed with the school boards and finding coaches who can go out and coach and grow the program there. So I think the biggest focus for kind of me is work and making sure I have an environment around that provides the energy there to be successful. So family and community are a huge part of being able to deliver on that.
That's cool. You're bringing rugby to schools where you are in Vancouver?
Trying to, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about books, podcasts, anything you're listening to now or that you've read in the past that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, there's so many books and great podcasts out there. I do listen to Diary of a CEO regularly with Steve Bartlett to recommend that for anyone there. It's just got some great speakers on, hearing about their kind of experience from the founders of Richard Branson, the founders of Netflix. And the book, Remembering the Hard Things About Hard Things. I don't remember the name of the book. I read last month, but I'll
That book just came up, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It just came up I was at Nico's Suncast Summit last week in Denver, and I believe that book was one of those that was recommended by another CEO. What about your team? We talked about how you stay healthy, stay motivated. What do you do to keep your team motivated?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I come back to values of the business and impact. The biggest thing, like people will talk about all of the softer things that maybe get a lot of buzz on LinkedIn about mental health and days off and all this other stuff. But the bottom line is, your team coming to work and excited about what they're doing there. And the number one thing that impacts that satisfaction is having a great manager. And I just come back to it on that point, like the fundamental, like people people have great job satisfaction working in a paperclip factory, right? If they have a great team they're working with and a great manager there. The big point I come back to the team though is impact. Like when our customers are able to get better financial returns, when our customers are logging in and using the software all the time, showing those metrics to the team, the impact that we're having on the work, when we've got customers who are happy to be reference points and are jumping up and down, being like, hey, this is a great product, this is really helping our team. That's really what gets the team kind of most excited. So when we slim back the company on sales and marketing, obviously that's really hard for the team going through items like that. But the bottom line was it just came back to customer impact. And the folks stuck with the team, they retained, have stayed with us for the journey there, because I think from a hiring perspective, we've got folks who want that impact, who want to be having an impact on every wind and solar and best asset on the planet, and we're on that journey there to achieve it.
My final question is, has your work left you a climate optimist or a climate pessimist?
Yeah, I'm a pragmatist, I guess, on these things as we go. Like I got into climate because I viewed it was the great existential crisis for us. The biggest way that I could have an impact there was taking my expertise and applying it to renewable energy there. But I remain an optimist all the time. The point is, we need to get kicked in the butt enough times to basically go out and fix on these things. So we're going to have huge climate impact, I'm sure, on that point. But I have a huge amount of faith in the innovation of humankind to kind of resolve these things. Like when I started working on wind farms, I mean, it was a really subsidized industry. Like last year, they installed 50% of the grid in Pakistan was built by people putting solar panels on their roofs. The ability to scale and deploy this technology is incredible. And I'm really excited about what we can do to kind of solve climate as we go forward.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Our producer is Claire Quirin. If you like what you hear on Scaling Clean episodes, we'd appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star rating and leave a comment where you get your podcast. And until next time, we wish you all the best in the clean economy transition.